Harden to the Houston Rockets, 2012. James Harden was drafted with the 3rd overall pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, 1 year after the OKC drafted Russell Westbrook and 2 years after they got Kevin Durant. In James' 3rd season, OKC reached the finals, and even though they lost to LeBron James and Miami Heat, they were still extremely young and had the brightest future of any team in the league. And despite the subpar performance in the finals, Harden was coming of the best year of his career and had won the 6th Man of the Year award. His contract was up for extension after the finals, and team owners were reluctant to give him a max deal because they already paid Durant and Westbrook and even Kendrick Perkins, who got a $32 million extension. Harden's max deal would have been $60 million over 4 years, and the team decided to lowball him and offered $55.5. $4.5 million less. Negotiations went on deep into the summer and ultimately fell through. Houston and its GM Daryl Morey smelled blood and quickly orchestrated a trade that brought Harden to Houston, and OKC got Kevin Martin's big contract and awkward-looking shoot, along with Jeremy Lamb and a couple of draft picks. Since the trade, James Harden scored more points than anybody else in the NBA and won an MVP award. OKC never reached the finals again, and for $4.5 million, they ruined the best young core in the league, which would ultimately lead to the departure of both Durant and Westbrook as well. Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to the Nets, 2013. There is an unspoken rule among GMs in the league. When Danny Ainge calls and proposes a trade, don't answer, as he's going to try to Jedi mind trick you into accepting a trade that's going to go badly for you and great for him. It's safer to just say no in advance. The highlights of Ainge's career include orchestrating Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen moves to Boston, which brought him an Executive of the Year award, hoodwinking the Sixers in the Jason Tatum deal, and duping the injured Isaiah Thomas to the Cavs for Kyrie Irving. But the best bamboozle trade he managed to pull off was the Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett trade to the Nets in 2013, for which he received 4 years of the first draft picks from the Nets in a multiplayer deal. Ainge absolutely fleeced Nets GM Billy King, who hoped that Pierce and Garnett would win him a championship instantly, as they did in 08 when Garnett just landed in Boston. However, this was 6 years later, and they were not the same players anymore. Brooklyn reached second round of the playoffs with Pierce and KG, after which Pierce left the team and Garnett followed 6 months later. Nets' future was buried in the sand because they didn't have any draft picks, and no free agents wanted to come to a lottery team. It took them 5 years before they got to playoffs again, while Boston enjoyed a plethora of picks and reached the playoffs every year since 2015. Dirk Nowitzki to Dallas Mavericks, 1998. Dirk Nowitzki is a symbol of the Dallas Mavericks, and few people remember that he wasn't even drafted there. In the 1998 NBA Draft, Dirk was selected by the Milwaukee Bucks, who didn't think much about the lanky, unathletic 7-footer from Germany. They had their eyes set on Robert Traylor, whom the Mavericks selected at number 6. Traylor was extremely physical and looked more like a football player, with 6'8" in height and weighing around 300 pounds. His nickname in college was Tractor Traylor, and because the league was much more physical in the 90s, they wanted to add more bulk to their team, which they certainly wouldn't get with Nowitzki. Considering that Traylor averaged 16 points and 10 rebounds for Michigan State University, he was thought to be a much safer pick than the German. Of course, they were terribly wrong. Nowitzki became the best European player ever, first European MVP, and a Mavericks legend. Traylor lasted 7 years in the league and averaged less than 5 points and 4 rebounds per game. Kobe Bryant to the Lakers for Vlade Divac, 1996. Jerry West is probably the best general manager in the history of the NBA. Almost every move he made turned to gold, and drafting Kobe was one of his best and most famous deals. The Lakers were interested in a young high school prospect from Lower Merion High School, and they brought him in for a workout. Jerry West called the recently retired veteran Michael Cooper to assist and play one-on-one against the 17-year-old Kobe. Cooper and everybody else thought he'd be able to defeat the young prospect based on his experience and strength, but Kobe absolutely obliterated and embarrassed the NBA veteran. He also showed incredible poise and maturity for his age, and Jerry West was smitten. He later said it was the best workout and interview he ever had with a draft prospect and was determined to do everything he could to draft Kobe. The Lakers were a playoff team and only had the 24th pick, so West knew he had to make a trade. Charlotte Hornets took the bait and sent the draft rights to Kobe for Vlade Divac, a fan favorite in LA. Divac was more than a solid starting center, but Jerry planned to sign a free agent, Shaquille O'Neal. In the summer of '96, West completed 2 moves that would create the best 1-2 punch in history and bring 3 championships to LA. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the Lakers, 1975. A happy flip of the coin rewarded the Bucks with the first pick in the 1969 NBA draft and gave them the opportunity to draft the best collegiate ball player ever, Lou Alcindor. And the marriage has been successful at first, crowned with a championship in 1971 and 3 MVP trophies for Alcindor, who then changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. However, after Oscar Robertson retired, Milwaukee struggled and missed the playoffs, which prompted Jabbar to give the team owners an ultimatum. He wanted to be traded. The team wasn't as good as he wanted, and he also had a desire to play in a bigger city that would appeal to his cultural interests. He put a list of 2 teams where he wanted to be traded. It was either LA or New York. The Bucks obliged and have sent the best player in the league to the Lakers. In return, they received Junior Bridgman, Dave Myers, Elmore Smith, and Brian Winters, all decent players, but neither of them was close to the caliber of Jabbar. Milwaukee hasn't reached the finals again to this day, and Kareem won 5 more championships with the Lakers. Bill Russell to the Boston Celtics, 1956. Red Auerbach is one of the greatest basketball minds and team builders of all time. Many people don't know that the greatest champion in basketball history, Bill Russell, wasn't even supposed to play for the Celtics. Russell was drafted 2nd overall in the 1956 NBA draft by the St. Louis Hawks. Hawks had a history of all-white teams, and black players weren't prohibited there, but they weren't exactly welcomed either. Red Auerbach knew that and proposed a trade for Bill Russell. In exchange, the Hawks received 2 white players, Cliff Hagan and Ed Macauley, who were good players and future All-Stars. However, neither of them was Bill Russell, the best basketball player in the world at the time and winner of 11 NBA titles with the Celtics. Wilt Chamberlain to the Lakers, 1968. LeBron James is often considered as the trailblazer of player empowerment movement in the NBA, with the practice of signing one-year deals, changing teams on his terms with a decision as the most defining moment of this era. It's a lesser-known fact that Wilt Chamberlain did the exact same thing some 40 years earlier. In 1968, after the 76ers lost in the conference finals to his arch-enemy Bill Russell and the Celtics, Wilt was not happy with the franchise. He had a dispute with the owner of the team and threatened to leave to the ABA if they didn't trade him. Wilt wanted to go to Los Angeles because of the lifestyle, other celebrities, and women. He told the general manager of the Sixers he would not play another minute for the team, even if he couldn't play basketball for a year, which would happen if he switched leagues and moved to ABA. Even though their hand was forced, the Sixers yielded too little for a player of Chamberlain's stature. They received center Darrell Imhoff, who averaged 7 points per game in his career, forward Jerry Chambers, who left for the military and never played for the team, and a talented combo guard Archie Clark, who played just 3 seasons for the Sixers. Wilt played 5 more with the Lakers, going to 4 finals and winning another championship. Scottie Pippen to the Chicago Bulls, 1987. Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame speech was memorable for many things, most notably for crying. That became a meme. But I always respected that the first thing he said on stage is that in the highlights of every championship he won, you didn't just see him, you also saw Scottie Pippen. Scottie Pippen was the ultimate Robin to Jordan's Batman. Pip was the best facilitator at his position in league history, aside from Larry Bird and LeBron James. He was also one of the best defenders of all time and an extremely gritty competitor, which was a prerequisite for playing with Jordan. However, Scottie wasn't even drafted by the Bulls. He went to Seattle Supersonics, who traded him for Chicago's Olden Polynice because they needed a center. Polynice averaged 5 points in 5 years for the Sonics, and Pippen won 6 championships for the Bulls, just slightly better. Charles Barkley to the Phoenix Suns, 1992. Charles Barkley started his career with the 76ers alongside future Hall of Famers and Dr. J and Moses Malone. After a few years, Moses was traded and Dr. J retired, leaving Barkley as the leader and lone superstar. Even though his numbers were terrific and he was the best power forward in the league, Barkley didn't have enough help and never went far in the playoffs. In the 91-92 season, Sixers missed the playoffs altogether, and Barkley had enough. He demanded a trade, and they sent him to the Phoenix Suns for Jeff Hornacek, Tim Perry, and Andrew Kane, which was a return of a quarter for $1. Barkley won the MVP the following season and went to the finals with the Suns, while the Sixers sunk to the bottom of the league and missed the playoffs in the next 6 years. Moses Malone to the Buffalo Braves, 1976. After the NBA and ABA merger, a dispersal draft was made, filled with players from ABA teams that would not participate in the NBA. Moses Malone was in that draft and was selected with the 5th pick by the Portland Trail Blazers. Not realizing that they just drafted one of the best centers of all time and a future 3-time MVP, the Blazers sent Malone to Buffalo Braves, a team that would later become the Los Angeles Clippers. In return, Portland received a first-round draft pick and $232,000 in cash. They would go on to win the title next year, but it was the last one in franchise history, which maybe wouldn't happen if they kept Moses.